Hey! Being alone sucks. And it can be scary for a lot of people. Actually, hot take, almost everyone is afraid of it. Now don't worry, I'll explain my case as well as making some jokes, but firstly, is this date of any relevance to you? Does the date July 20th of 1969 ring any bells? Well, don't worry if you don't remember it, chances are you were not even alive, but this might be one of the most important dates for humanity, because this was the first day that a human being first stepped foot on the moon. Yes, on this thing right here. Now stuff might start to seem a lot more clearer. You kind of know about this situation. You even know the crew members that were part of the mission. There were 3 of them, right? The most famous one, Neil Armstrong, the first man to ever step foot there. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who also was able to walk on the moon's surface. But there was a 3rd one. A man that was as important as those 2, but that unfortunately wasn't able to go down there, making him by consequence not that remembered. A man who for some minutes was the most isolated man in the history of mankind, going around the moon and dangling alone in an empty, never-ending void. A man who was more alone than anyone has ever been. The loneliest man ever. Today, we'll be talking about the fear of being alone and why it is the most unnatural fear of all. I know that this might be a bold statement, to call something the most unnatural fear of all, having in mind that there are snakes and spiders and clowns, but I promise that it makes sense, especially if we make us the center of the conversation, which, if we are talking about fears, it makes sense. And also don't worry, I'll develop the moon landing story and the loneliest man ever, but later in the video. Stick to the end. Don't fail me. And also, did you know that I am refilming this whole section of the green screen? Yes, that's why I don't have legs, because I didn't really want to build the whole thing up again. Microphone started doing screeches. Either way, firstly I think we ought to understand something. Why do we, individual beings, have a fear of being alone as individuals? And yes, even if you don't think you have it, I can almost guarantee that you do, at least in some level. And of course that when I say fear, I don't mean that you start running and screaming like a crazy man when you are alone. I'm not really trying to talk about what would people consider as autophobia, like having panic attacks once you find yourself by yourself. What do I mean by fear is that your body just reacts differently to when you are alone if compared to when you are not alone, even if you don't really notice it. Let's take that physiological response of your body to loneliness as the fear of being alone for this video's sake, okay? Or maybe when you are alone you start running and screaming like a madman. I don't really know you, I don't really want to know you. Anyway, why is that? Well, I have actually touched on this topic in this video right here where I talk about the complexity of society. Go give it a watch when you finish this one, but only when you finish this one. Do not mess with my retention rate. Thank you. We humans often tend to think of ourselves as special beings, gods amongst this natural world, but we are, for all intents and purposes, animals, and we went under the rules of natural selection and evolution just like every single being that lives in this planet. Polar bears are white because white bears survived best in the place that they live in, where there is snow. This caterpillar looks like a snake because it favored her survival. No one wants to mess with a snake. Monkeys are strong and can swing around trees because if they weren't strong enough they would be on the ground and would be eaten. Summarizing, if a characteristic benefits the survival of a species, then that characteristic will be passed on through generations in the DNA. I hope that Charles Darwin isn't doing flips in his tomb because of my explanation. Well, developing an example, monkeys that were not strong enough and that were not able to swing around trees would sit on the ground. By them sitting on the ground, predators would take notice and they would be eaten, which, medical fact, would lead to their death and to the inability of spreading their genes, cause, medical fact number 2, they can't have sex and reproduce if they are dead. Or at least I hope so. Now on the other hand, monkeys that were strong enough to swing around trees would be able to survive, and that way the "I'm strong" gene would be spread to later generations, and a similar thing happened to us. Well, we are and were not really the strongest, fastest, or anything that ends in "ust" when it comes to physical abilities, not even if compared to similar species to us, like the Neanderthals, so we had to compensate with something else, otherwise we would have all died. And we did it by being smart and social, living in groups and having a good interconnected social system that favored our survival over, for example, again, the Neanderthals. Look at an ant, completely useless if alone, but a swarm of them? Goodbye, Mr. Scorpion. And that's essentially what we use and used back in the day. Could a single human take out a mammoth? Well, probably not, since at the time there were not RPGs being sold at weapons stores. But 20 of us, with spears and ropes and communication to lure him into deep pits? Well, that's a far easier task, if I may say. Not to mention that on those hunts, for instance, there were no problems with babies being a burden, because women would be at the shelter taking care of them. It was all mixed and well organized, and without a doubt made us survive more effectively, meaning that those who wanted and were good at living amongst others, those who preferred to live in social groups that had a social structure, would have a higher chance of survival than the so-called lone wolves, the antisocial people. But what does this mean? Well, imagine you were the lone wolf. You are not really good at deciphering social clues, you don't really share deep love or help people, and quite honestly, you don't even care if you are with people or not. When you are alone, there isn't that need of socializing. You don't have bad outcomes psychologically if you are alone, so eventually you get fired from the group. You are now on your own, in the middle of nature as a fragile, weak, and not fast individual, the perfect target for all kinds of animals. Do you think that those people would be able to survive for long? That they would be able to spread their genes to later generations, their antisocial genes? Of course not. Those guys or girls would die and their genes would die with them, meaning that the ones who lived in groups and who craved to live inside social gatherings and that were afraid to be alone would be the ones that would survive for the most part, ultimately spreading the social DNA. So throughout God damn it. So throughout the thousands of years of human evolution, humans got selected to be the most social that they can be to optimally survive their reality. Social needs got effectively implemented in our DNA through natural selection, and that can be seen even in today's age. Because you see, even if nowadays we don't really die off of animal attacks if we are alone, due to it being in our DNA, we still need to socialize. Our DNA still makes us want to be around people, because if we are not, because if we just succumb to loneliness, we will die to an animal attack, or at least what our DNA thinks. Also a little parenthesis, Neanderthals were also social, and some studies even suggest that they were stronger and that they had bigger brains, but their social structures were apparently not as good and well developed as ours. That's one theory of why they got dead. They got dead. Anyway, all of this to get to an important question. What happens when we are alone? I'm here talking about how being alone is bad and all that, but why? Like, back then, sure, animals could kill us if we were alone, but nowadays, that's not a problem. Nowadays, the chances of me getting mauled down by a tiger are not that high, unless I live in India. God forbid. I'm kidding. Not really. Like, I have doors inside my house, and sure, that's right, but we evolved to be around people. Our brain doesn't care if when we are alone we will survive. Our brain wants to socialize because that's how it evolved. Because if we don't, we will die or something. I don't know, fuck if I know, science and shit. That means that being alone has a multitude of side effects, and not the cool ones, like when you use testosterone to get big and now you can't have kids. The side effects of being alone do not promote fun times, unless you like being depressed and anxious and borderline miserable. And if you don't want to have legs, I don't know. So going back to literally just now, if someone had bad side effects from being alone, sorry, then those bad side effects of being alone would go to later generations in the DNA. Because, you know, if someone had bad side effects from being alone, they would not be alone and they would survive. I think it makes sense. In a study published by Northwestern University and Arizona State University in 2010, where the objective was to correlate cortisol levels to the feeling of loneliness, was seen that people who felt chronically lonely had higher baselines of cortisol from the moment they woke up to the moment they went to sleep, which is a time where your body should be lowering cortisol levels to help your body relax and sleep, since cortisol is essentially the stress hormone, showing that chronically lonely people live almost in a constant moment of stress and can't even have a good quality of sleep. or at least not that good. It's like they can never fully relax, it's like they're always somewhat anxious. Also in the same study, it was shown that normal people, if exposed to acute moments of loneliness, would also release more cortisol than what is normal, which, as I said, leads to more stress and anxiety, and it's not really ideal. Now, this might seem like it's not really that important. Being lonely, or in this case, feeling lonely, just leads to me being more stressed and sleeping badly. Who cares? I'm gonna keep on being the lone wolf that I am, and playing alone and doing shit alone. That doesn't really seem that bad. I just don't sleep well and are anxious. Who cares? Date mindset. Well, hold on. Because higher levels of cortisol, aka of stress, especially chronically, don't just make you stressed. It can lead to a whole array of conditions like cardiovascular problems, cardiovascular problems, heart shit, as I said before, sleep issues, which is linked to a whole array of conditions, and even cognitive health. In a study published by UK Biohack featuring 500,000 participants, was found that loneliness was associated with 59% of the cases of Alzheimer's and dementia, meaning that individuals that had Alzheimer's felt they were alone almost 60% of the time, which is an absurd amount. That could be happening because a constant higher level of cortisol could link to a higher degree of inflammation, especially in the brain, which is one of the big factors for people to develop those kinds of diseases. So as you can see, loneliness is really bad for humans, and it has a lot of scientific background supporting it, and not just in a psychological standpoint like feeling like I'm alone and depressed and boo-hoo, but it can lead to actual physical things happening to your body, such as heart, sleep, and brain problems. With this said, it is expected that someone who was alone for long periods of time would have irreversible damage to their psyche and bodies, right? So let's talk about some extreme cases of loneliness. The first one to be mentioned is the case of José Salvador Alvarenga, a fisherman from Mexico that departed from the coast for a 30-hour shift in a tiny boat to fish. But little did he know that those 30 hours would turn into 438 days alone in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Now, he didn't spend all that time alone. He had a friend who also got lost with him, Ezequiel Cordoba. Thing is, his friend died after only 4 months into being lost in the middle of the sea. He went crazy from only eating raw fish and some raw birds and drinking sea turtle blood, and he basically starved to death because he refused to eat anymore of that shit. The only company that could keep Alvarenga sane died. He did keep the corpse for some time, so he had someone to talk to, but then, again, after some time he got into his senses and got to the conclusion that speaking to a dead, rotting body isn't really the most healthy thing to do, so he threw the corpse of his deceased friend into that never-ending ocean. And there he was, now, completely alone in the middle of the sea. And the thing is, he had to essentially withstand that feeling of extreme loneliness for basically another full year. A full year of a type of loneliness that it's usually not found in any human being, until he finally got in touch with the Marshall Islands, where he got rescued. Now, if you take into account what we discussed back then, of how loneliness f***s with your health, especially with prolonged times of loneliness, then you might be thinking that Alvarenga is done. Irreversible damage was done to his psyche and to his body. But the thing is, he was good. Besides some sunburn and malnutrition and dehydration, he was kind of okay. Nothing more to worry about. That's odd. How is that possible? Well, I'll come back to that, but firstly let me double down on the coming back to that and go back to the beginning of the video and talk a little bit about Michael Collins. You might be asking, who is Michael Collins? Well, he's the third astronaut that took part on the Apollo 11 mission, but that unfortunately wasn't able to go down there into the moon's surface and had to stay around in orbit to rescue his friends so they wouldn't be stuck in there forever. That meant that as he was going around the moon, there was a time where he was effectively the loneliest man that humanity has ever seen. And to make it worse, since the entire moon was on its way, there was a period of time, more precisely 55 minutes, where he was not able to have communication with anyone. So there he was, a man on a tiny metal space rocket as far as ever without even being able to communicate with anyone, just stranding in the middle of a never-ending void. But yet again, it didn't seem to really affect him that much. By his own words, since he has done many interviews regarding this topic, he even felt peace. He found it peaceful, which is really weird. How can I, in a moment, be telling you that loneliness is really bad for you, and then I talk about an extreme case of loneliness in terms of distance, and Alvarenga an extreme case of loneliness in terms of time and a little bit of distance, and they suffer no consequences. There's nothing bad with them when it came to the consequences of loneliness. How is that possible? Well, I think that there might be an explanation. So let's go back to the green screen. Why didn't they feel alone? Yes, they might have been some of the loneliest people that ever existed, some of the most isolated in terms of distance and in terms of time, but they did not feel fear or any type of problem due to being lonely because maybe they were not actually that lonely. If you remember well, when I talked about the studies that revolved around being alone, I not only said that those people were lonely, but that they also felt lonely. Those were people who felt like they had no one else around them. Even if they did, what mattered is that they felt alone. Yes, Alvarenga and Michael Collins were alone as anyone has ever been, at least physically, but they didn't feel like they were alone. Alvarenga was trying to survive for his family. He knew that if he did survive, his family would be happy, and that most likely they were also trying to find him. Michael Collins also knew that people were waiting for him, even though that he was literally on the other side of the moon, as far as ever from any human being, and without even the ability to communicate with anyone for 55 minutes, he knew that in a few moments people would be there to greet him, and that he was needed to complete the mission. So all this in the end comes to the fact that when we talk about being lonely, it doesn't really feel like it's a physical thing. Humans don't fear being alone physically, but it's more a psychological thing. Humans fear not having connections, fear not being able to share their interests, their stories, who they are, fear not being able to truly communicate with someone, and to not be inside a social group. Now the thing is, I'm here telling you that the fear of being alone comes almost only from a psychological perspective and not a physical one, at least my definition of fear of being alone. And that would make sense having in mind all the examples that I gave you, from the actual examples to the studies. However, in today's age, we are the most connected that a society has ever been. We can talk to the other side of the world and get a response in under 5 seconds. We are connected to everyone at every time. I am in your house right now while you're watching me in a little screen. And that happens with absolutely everyone, at least in the modern society of, not that poor people. But still, today's society feels the most lonely. According to a Meta-Gallup survey, it was seen that 1 in 4 people feel some type of loneliness. In this article from BBC, it was seen that 10% of adults also feel loneliness at all times, with many other surveys to back it up. But why? As I said, yes, we may not be physically in touch, but we are emotionally in touch. We can speak and socialize with anyone. We can be part of any social group at any time, and there's otakus and gamers and whatever you want to call yourself. You're always part of something. But maybe things are not as simple as just feeling like we are alone. Maybe it's not as simple as it's not a physical thing, it's a psychological thing. Because even to counter my argument with Alvarenga and Michael Collins, there's people who were in solitary confinement that were alone for long periods of time, and those people suffered a whole lot. So I'm f***ing my own ass here. Yeah, Jesus. On camera and everything. Anyway, yes, sure, playing Call of Duty or League of Legends with your friends at night is cool. Talking with your homies in a group chat is funny. Sharing reels can be thoughtful, but those are not things that we were evolved to do in the end. We were not evolved to smile at a rectangle made out of glass and like Instagram posts and scream at your computer while you are doing a ace on CSGO or a pentakill with Katarina. I don't know. I'm not a nerd. Actually, yes I am. We were evolved to smile at people and to be with people, to share with people, meaning that what I said about those extreme cases of loneliness just went down the rail by some extent. By a lot, I mean, by a lot really. Why did I make that part of the video? I don't know. In a study published by Neuroscience Letter, there was seen that just by looking at the faces of loved ones, friends or romantic partners, there was seen a significant increase in heart rate and in brain activity in certain areas of the brain related to emotion processing. In one done by Leekoping University, I think that's how you pronounce it, it was seen that the touch of loved ones significantly increased the release of oxytocin, which is essentially the feel-good hormone. But that isn't found if you touch, I don't know, the picture of your mom or dog. It's not the same thing, because we were not designed for it to be the same thing. And maybe that is why this generation feels and is the most anxious and depressed of generations ever. Even if, for the most part, we live in a world where everything is easy. Yes, there's wars and all that shit, but for the most part, like, there's no bears and rainstorms to fuck up our crops, and we don't have to kill mammoths with spears, but yet, we are still the most anxious and depressed of societies ever. Depression is even called the silent pandemic. Now I think it boils down to some stuff, and it's not just the fear of being alone, but the fact that we are actually not as social as we think we are. The fact that we don't hang out physically more with people and actually socialize like human beings are supposed to, have quality socializing times, in my opinion, plays a huge role to this uprising of psychological problems. My voice cracked. Again, I don't really think it's the only reason. I'm also not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, Jesus, but it is there on the shelf of reasons for psychological problems, okay? Meaning that feeling alone goes far beyond feeling like we are alone, and also being physically alone. Everything is a lot more nuanced and complex without a definitive answer. And all this complexity and nuance gets even more points from me after one specific date. April 28th of 2025. If you don't live in Portugal or Spain or parts of France, I honestly don't know anymore, maybe this date doesn't mean anything to you. But if you do, like me, then you might remember it as the day that lights and water essentially went down. And of course that would mean that there would be no internet and no social media for about 12 hours. I won't try to romanticize and say that the world would be a better place that way, because it most likely wouldn't. No fridge to store meat, no water to take a decent shit, no cars, no real way to visit other countries unless by f***ing horse, Red Dead 2 style. I wouldn't be able to make my stupid videos. But when it came to socializing, 5 hours into the lights being out, I still had phone signals, and I literally just told some friends of mine to come by my house at 3 o'clock on the other day if there still was no lights. Also, on that day, I was able to play ping pong, soccer, chess with my little brother. I made a castle of cards like I haven't done that in ages. I sat outside eating for like 20 minutes looking at the sky just like a f***ing caveman. There was no TV during dinner. I went to take a walk. Completely different from the norm. But it was, undoubtedly, the longest day that I had in years. It didn't feel like a single day. It felt like 3 different ones. It didn't feel like a blur in the back of my mind as each action melts into one another. I can still say exactly what I did that day, and it was well more than a month ago. It was well more than 2 months ago. It was a pretty cool day. And guess what? I'm not the only one that feels like this. People love this experience, if you can call it an experience, and even wish that maybe we could have something like this once a month, you know? Just saying. Which makes sense. People were on the streets talking, not hunched over their phones. There was no more social anxiety. It was a sight to behold, let me tell you. Humans doing what humans are supposed to do. Making eye contact, making small talk, I don't know, shit we used to do back in the day. And not that long ago, to be honest. But then lights came on again. Social media became the norm again. Being hunched over the phones while walking became the norm again. Not truly socializing as humans should became the norm again. On another note, Very recently I went into a music festival, a metal festival to be more precise. Yes, I'm that kind of guy that likes to hear 50-year-old men screaming and doing pig-like noises into a microphone. You know the band Korn? Yeah, I was there vibing to this. Amazing. Well, anyway, when I go to those places, I make sure to be present in every single mosh pit that I can be in. Yes, afterwards I end up like this, but it is worth it. I think. Whatever. I always try to leave my phone in the lockets of the festival agency, I don't know. I don't bring my phone into the concert so that I can be fully immersed. I'm not there checking on the phone or whatever. No, I'm there to listen to the music and to hit people. And when those days were over, as I was resting, all fucked up in a bungalow, in the middle of the forest, again, all bruised up, completely done, I just couldn't help to think, why do I go to places like that? Why a metal festival? Is it to listen to the music? Well, it can't be, otherwise I would listen to it in my house or in my car, and I do, but it's different. Is it to relieve my anger while I'm being violent in the mosh pit? Well, maybe, but again, I could relieve my anger breaking stuff in my house. I could take this rock and throw it away. And I bet that if the people that were there in the mosh pit were replaced with, I don't know, body pillows, it just wouldn't be the same. Deep down, I went into that place to listen to music and to have fun with people around me, even if I don't really think that I did. Even if the only guys that I knew were my brother and a friend of mine, deep down, my human genes wanted to be there, to be around all those crazy, sweaty people. All of this, the days that light went out and the music festival, made me think that if at least when it came to socializing, if a lack of technology or of internet or whatever you want to call it, wouldn't be better for us to get the benefits of socializing, or at least to not get the bad things that come from being alone and not truly socializing. It made me think that if the world wouldn't be a better place, taking into account that we are social beings, if the world wouldn't be a better place without the tech that we have, without internet, without global communication, without social media, made me think if it wouldn't get rid of this fear of being alone, of being lonely. Because as I said in the beginning of the video, this is the most unnatural fear of all. And not because we shouldn't have it, but because we have made it to ourselves. We made sure to turn technological evolution into essentially a digression in the human species. We made sure to turn a deep fear present in the DNA of human nature into our day-to-day reality. So maybe, I don't know, go outside, go talk to some people, make small talk, hug them, play with your friends online. Just do something to make sure that you don't feel alone and that you are actually not alone, whatever that may be for you. Because that shit sucks. Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and sub and all that. And also, if you left this video with more questions than answers, then I made my job. Also, watch this video right here. It has kind of the fucking car. It has kind of the same topic. It's about human connectivity and all that shenanigan that you that if you ended up in the end of this video, you will like it too, I guess. I don't know. Watch it. Peace, brothers. I was gonna die, but